Hi, everybody. Thank you again for hopping on. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to turn this over to our Titanium Spotlight session with ECG Group. We have Kendra McQuilton and Greg Diefenbach here. So I'll give it to you guys to take it away. Kendra, if you want to start your screen share, we'll get that all set up.
Thank you so much, Jory, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to really give a high-level overview of how energy performance contracts can help school districts with funding systems that have never been really attractive or sexy, as they say, ventilation systems. And I'm sure you've experienced with COVID that there's never been more attention given to the health of the classroom environment. And ventilation systems, unfortunately, are expensive. A lot of them are not up to the current codes. And, it's something that school districts just struggle with because they have to figure out how to fund these, and virtually every district has a certain problem in one building or another. So we're going to talk about how ventilation systems can help improve the environment in the classroom, and specifically with energy performance contracts being a means to an end with these. I'm going to turn it over to Greg Diefenbach, who some of you or all of you may know from his days as a school business official. He's recently retired, and I'm thrilled to have him on my team. And he'll do some introductions, and then we'll get started.
Kendra, thank you very much. I appreciate everything. And good morning, everybody. I'll be very brief because there's a lot to cover here, and Kendra has a lot to bring to your attention. I just want to say it's a pleasure being here as a former business administrator and SCD person, as well as working in BOCES state aid planning. I've seen over the years, and I know quite well, that the financial needs of school districts are great. There's not a lot of revenue, so we have to look at other ways of doing things. And over the years, it's always comes back to, when you look at the expenditure side, energy. Energy has always been an issue. I know for me, be it oil, electric, gas, and this doesn't really play per se, but school buses, I mean, let's face it, they don't get much miles for the gallon, and there's a lot of expense involved there, but that's a whole nother story for another day. So I think this is the perfect time to find a way to improve and garner some savings. Like I said, I'm here to basically facilitate anything you may have questions as a business official. But at this point, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it right back to Kendra. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And I just realized I have to get a new headshot. I got longer hair from COVID too, lots of changes, but anyway. Yeah, I've been with ECG, it's my family business, for 20 years. So the only thing that we do is help school districts with energy performance contracts. I'm really passionate about them. They get a bad rap because if they're not done with the right levels of control and expertise on your team, a lot of times they'll go sideways or people will be dissatisfied, but I like using them to help districts get a win. So today we're going to briefly talk about what is an energy performance contract, what are the benefits, how does it work, and how they relate to improving the student environment. And Greg or Jory, please interrupt me if there's any questions. This is your session, so I would love it if people could interject with questions because it makes it a lot more interesting and relevant to you. So I thought it might be an interesting statistic to share with you as business officials that across our country, the EPA reports that school districts are spending $6 billion a year on energy, and of that, 30% is used inefficiently. So that's a big number. And it turns out that energy and utilities is typically the number 2 budget item behind people, HR, personnel costs in your budget. It's the second largest. Now, what's great about energy is that it's a big expense that you have some degree of control over, as opposed to others that are just fixed and you have to pay them and you're in contracts and there's nothing you can do. This is one that you can reduce. And so, you know, this is big. If you are spending, say, $1 million a year on energy, $300,000 of that could be eliminated using different funding mechanisms, such as a performance contract. So the way I like to describe an energy performance contract, it's a way to pay for upgrades now with tomorrow's energy savings. So what happens is a comprehensive audit is performed. Everything that consumes energy is looked at, evaluated, given an ROI. How long would it take to pay for this based on the annual savings that this would generate if we replaced it? A boiler, lighting, steam traps, all kinds of things, a lot of mechanical systems. And a package of upgrades is put together that must pay for itself out of the guaranteed energy savings that your district realizes as a result of making the upgrades. So it's a wash. We're not talking about getting bottom line savings here. We're using energy performance contracting as a funding mechanism. It is an alternative funding mechanism for energy related capital needs that you have. And it can be a very large funding source, as I'm going to share with you a case study in a bit at a district that generated $30 million worth of additional funding. So it involves a school district. Now, the old way of doing EPCs would be a school district would enter directly into a contract with what's called an ESCO, or Energy Services Company. Johnson Controls, Honeywell, big, large companies like that. They would sign contracts that they may or may not have been fully aware of all the implications to the terms and conditions about how the savings guarantee is rendered, the obligations of the school district versus the obligations of the ESCO in the overall project. And when the actual savings started to get generated and reported on, they felt like maybe they didn't even get the value that they thought they were going to get, or the savings. So the new model and a best practice, frankly, in doing energy performance contracts is to ensure you have eyes and ears and trained experts on your side of the table to interface with that ESCO, to put you in a power position, in a position of control in the project, rather than you having to rely 100% on the ESCO for all the expertise, because you don't know all the ins and outs of a performance contract. You're not supposed to, and it's impossible to get up to speed quickly overnight. There's just too much to know. But so the way to do it, to ensure your success, is to first partner with your chosen energy engineers. Then an ESCO is retained. They will go audit the buildings, build out the project in a turnkey manner, and they guarantee the energy savings. The result is a very large, usually, although it can be smaller, depending on the district, funding source for energy-related upgrades. So we're going through your building condition survey and we're checking off, okay, that boiler that's been, on the list for the last 10 years, let's address that through the EPC. Lighting will be comprehensively changed out to LED. Look at your priorities. We're able to accommodate a lot of district priorities through these projects. And of course, ventilation. So the way it sort of works financially in a nutshell is that, let's just say, again, you spend $1 million today on gas, oil, electric, everything combined. And so that's the first column there before the EPC. That's today at your district. After you do a performance contract, usually your energy spend is reduced by, on average, 30%. All right, that's how big of a dent these projects can make. There is no other way that I'm aware of that you can make this large and significant of a reduction in energy other than this model, because it's so comprehensive. So after the project is built, you've got all the new efficient equipment in, what you have is a reduced energy budget accordingly. So your budget goes down. There's $300,000, in debt service payments. That's the savings that the project is generating. Okay, so they have to materialize for you to then cover the debt service. At minimum, you'll be receiving that guaranteed energy savings that was part of the contract. Now, there's a part up here for positive cash flow, because there always is a cash positive outcome in an EPC. The reason for that is that you can only use your building aid on interest on the borrowing in an EPC. You can't use it to subsidize the cost of the improvements. So once that interest is satisfied, if you have 50+% building aid, that has to be realized as positive cash flow to the district. So there's going to be positive cash flow. And so that middle column there is years 1 through 18. That's typically the project term. And then after the EPC, you still have that lower energy budget, but you don't have the debt service payments anymore. So you keep all the savings that have been generated off the project. So it's all recognized as positive cash flow. So there are complexities to it. We don't have time to get into, but really that's the idea, is that you're trading up energy savings for capital work, and it's no impact to the taxpayers. Now, when your superintendents and board members and yourselves and others in school districts talk about student success and learning, a lot of emphasis is usually placed on different programs, people, teachers, tools, things like that. But it's very important that the learning environment, the physical environment, be also considered, because student success starts there. It's, are they sitting in a dim classroom? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? These are all factors that undermine student success. And when you do an EPC, we actually address 6 out of the 9 healthy building factors that have been established. Lighting, that's an obvious one. You've got to have quality lighting so they can see their work. They can see what they're doing. They see the classroom boards and there's no glare. Ventilation, okay? We're looking at ventilation systems. Air quality, thermal health, if it's too hot, if it's too cold, that's a huge distraction for teachers and students alike. And then, of course, moisture and water quality. These are all things that are looked at as well. So it's really, I think, a way for everybody to get a win in a school district, whether it's, yourself as a school business official. This is a great financial tool. A lot of board members that I present to call this a no-brainer, because it's like you're doing significant upgrades for the kids and there's no cost to the taxpayer because it's all funded out of money you're already spending. It's energy savings. It's part of your energy budget that's simply getting removed and deployed to a debt service to pay for the project. The last slide, and are there any questions? Let me just pause for a moment.
No questions yet.
Okay, so there's many advantages to EPCs over traditional capital projects, and I'll just run through a few of them. I've already talked about the massive impact that they can have. This is not doing lighting in this wing of a building and then waiting for funding in another part of a building, and we'll do that next year, or we'll get to this part next year. It's not a piecemeal approach. It's look at everything holistically and tackle to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of really reducing energy spend. It's turnkey, so you don't have a low bidding process. You don't have to worry about, the quality of the equipment, because equipment quality is prioritized here. It has to deliver the energy savings. So what you find is higher quality equipment is essential to make sure that those savings are delivered year after year after year. So for you, it's streamlined. Again, you're not in the middle of an architect and a construction manager and primes, and Wick's law doesn't apply here either. So you don't have all that contract administration. It's turnkey. Improves the learning environment. We've gone over that. Taxpayer friendly. No out-of-pocket expenses for the district. No tax increase for this project. Okay. Rapid implementation. A lot of you are looking at ESSER funds right now and figuring out where to spend those for your applications due on June 15th. We are working with several districts that are in the middle of performance contracts that are putting some of that money into the EPC, because you have to spend it fairly quickly. And EPCs allow for rapid implementation. There's no voter approval required. As soon as the board decides they want to do a project, you go. You, again, don't have to worry about the voter approval phase. You don't have to worry about the bidding phase. You just go. You get SED approval, you finance it, and you're off to the races with construction. It's a fixed price contract, so there are no change orders, which is another really nice thing. You're not going to be in the middle having to justify to the board why it went over or this or that. That's not allowed unless you initiate one. If you want to change the scope, you can do that. Savings are guaranteed. If the district enters into a contract and the guaranteed annual savings is $250,000, and that's what you need to cover your debt service. If they're not realized, the ESCO, the company that you retain to build the project, must cut you a check for the difference. They must make you whole. Now, I could give a whole separate presentation on how it's really not that simple, because you have to understand how the contract language is structured, so that the companies can't get off the hook with that. You have to make it a meaningful guarantee in the contract. So that's a whole other discussion, but if you control the project right, you will have your guaranteed energy savings. And, lastly, positive PR. I mean, we've been through a terrible year here. A lot of loss is being talked about, a lot of, taking away this and just, the school, the students have been, challenged in so many ways. This is a way to kind of, as we're turning the corner, start this new phase, this new year with a really positive initiative that the whole community can feel really good about, and it's bringing positive change to the school district.
We have one question from the chat. Someone asked, what is the timeline for SED approval?
It's actually quite a bit better than in years past. It takes about, we're averaging about 4 months for SED approval. I mean, it depends on the size of and complexity of the project, of course, but that's what we're seeing. Any other questions?
Not at the moment, but if you do have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat and I will share them with Kendra and Greg.
Thank you. Okay, so just to bring this to life and show you what is actually happening at a school district right now, we're working with the Newburgh School District and we have the New York State Superintendent of the Year in charge of this district. And we have gotten so much positive mileage out of this project. It's just off the charts, the statistics that we're driving here. So they've got a $30 million energy performance contract, 100% funded, self-funded. The energy savings is about 1.3 million a year. Again, that's funding the debt service. We are nearing the end of construction, but they have decided or are strongly considering adding some ESSER funding into the project because we already have the contractors on site. They know the buildings, we know the buildings, we can quickly identify upgrades, get them up to SED as an addendum to the contract, and go keep building. And the reduction in energy costs, as well as the reduction in greenhouse gases, these two really go hand in hand, is 60%. Because it's so laser focused on the systems that produce greenhouse gases, CO2. These are all mechanical systems, and the technology that's available today is just leaps and bounds beyond what is typically in school districts right now, as far as efficiency goes. There have been so many advances in technology just in the last 10 years. A lot of districts don't have them in place right now. So this is a way to get them into place. And they're doing all kinds of upgrades. LED lighting, that's always a staple. That's always done throughout the district. Boiler upgrades, which a lot of districts have. They're going to all digital direct control temperature control systems. So everything can be controlled remotely, you know, on computers, on cell phones. They're doing a megawatt of solar. And they're also doing a ton of window replacements. And one thing that I think is a cool strategy for performance contracts is that, you know, a lot of you probably have seen or have now admin buildings that, you know, are somewhat neglected, put on the back burner, you know, the needs of admin buildings, because you're not going to get aid on that. And in a performance contract, you're still not going to get aid on that. But it's a way to use an alternative funding source rather than, you know, asking the taxpayers to pay more for the needs of the admin building. You know, you may not want to load up a bond with, you know, windows throughout the admin building, because they're going to be like, well, kids aren't in there. You know, this is for your offices. You know, it may not go over well, but here it's a very elegant way to do that. And they did replace all the windows in the admin building. So this was a huge and continues to be a huge win for this district. And there are many others that are having similar success. So I really ripped through that quickly in the interest of time. And, you know, there is a lot more to talk about on energy performance contracts. I'll just leave you with that, you know, if you are thinking that you have some of these systems that I talked about, like lighting or boilers or HVAC or ventilation, that really need to be addressed, this is a really nice way to do it. Save your bond dollars, save your capital reserve for other needs that every district is always going to have, like parking lots, you know, aesthetic needs that you have, and let the EPC fund those mechanical systems, because they're going to throw off that savings that can help you really do more for the community with less impact on them financially. So thank you so much. If anybody would like a copy of this, I believe ASBO would provide that, or you can certainly feel free to, you know, contact me or Greg if you have any other questions. And I'll be happy to take any additional questions. We have a few minutes.
That was the one question we had in the chat, was about getting a copy of the presentation. So again, you know, email Kendra or Greg. We'll get a copy of it. Email Jory if you want a copy. She's happy to provide it. But thank you very much.
Yeah. Kendra, if you want to email me a copy of your presentation, I'll post it within the session details within the Pathwell app.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you, Jory.
See, do we have any other questions? Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Feel free to unmute and interject.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If your plan is up for it at SED at this time and it's been over 4 months, who do we contact to see what the status of that approval is?
I believe your project manager would be able to tell you the status of that. We typically, you know, we'll check the queue, we'll see what number they're on in terms of what they're reviewing now, and kind of we can estimate how far behind we are.
So would that be like someone from your office, like Mike Ryan or someone like that? Would that be my project manager?
Oh, I mean your SED project manager. I'm sorry.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right, no problem.
I think that they could help you. Please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but you know,
That-
they typically can give you an estimate. And you know,
That- That's
if
who you would, Kendra. That's the people
Yeah.
you would call. And in fact, there's actually on their website, it gives you, you can go right to your school district and it'll line up and tell you where you are on the status on, but you certainly should call the project manager.
So you say go to SED website and they could, and you can see where your school is listed,
Go to, yes, and go to facilities planning
okay?
and there'll be different tabs to pick and it can actually set, you'll put in your beds code and then you can pop in from there. But certainly you can call your project manager. You know, I as you know, I worked at SED, so that's kind of how we did it there. And as a business official, be honest with you, I shortcutted all that. I just went right to my project manager, said, hey, can you give me an idea where we are? That's the best I could suggest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
you for the question. And it brings up, you know, a point with SED. I mean, that's our average, but you know, SED, they do a double review on these projects, you know, so they're reviewing them for code, but they're also reviewing the investment grade energy audit developed by the ESCO. And if that has not been reviewed and made bulletproof for SED for accuracy, and if no one's reviewing that to make sure that it's going to pass their muster, and a lot of the rules, you know, some of them are written, some of them are kind of unwritten, but they are understood that, you know, they don't like certain strategies that could absolutely prolong your process. So I hope you don't have that, you know, but that's something that you need to be aware of, that it can get hung up if they're seeing issues with the investment grade audit.
If you have any questions, please feel free to unmute. Otherwise, thank you again to Kendra and Greg